Hi everyone, my name's Siobhan. Welcome to this live coding video. In it, we're going to be having a look at how to create a loop in AppScript. So that means we're going to be able to repeat sections of code multiple times at once, which is really useful. So first things first, we're going to start, as you might have guessed, with a spreadsheet in Google Drive. I've actually made a folder for this section, part 3, loops and ifs here, ready to put in my files. So I'm now going to go to New, Google Sheets, and wait for the spreadsheet to open. There we go. So I'm going to rename my spreadsheet. I'm going to call this one Loops Live Coding. Then I'll know what it is. Perfect. Now, we do need something in our spreadsheet that we could loop through at some point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the days of the week here. So I'm going to start with Monday, and then I'm going to hit enter and write Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'm going to assume that Google Sheets is clever enough now to work out the rest of them. It is perfect. The joys of modern technology. So I've got my days of the week here that I can loop through when I get to it. It doesn't actually matter what it is, but put it down a column. And if you've got 7, it makes it easier because it's the same as me. So it can be the days of the week, but it could be 7 other things. Next, we're going to open the script editor. So I'm going to extensions, AppScript. And here we are ready to start our new project. I'm going to rename the project as Loops Live Coding, like so. I'm going to click rename. And then I'm also going to rename my code file here. Now, we're going to make our first loop. So I'm just going to call this one my loop. It's my first loop. That's the same name as the function. So I'm going to go and change the function from my function to my loop. Convenient. And then I'm going to hit enter a couple of times and hit save, as you're probably used to doing by now in our live coding exercises. So all we're going to do in this bit of code is write the most basic loop you can, so you can see some of the syntax. So as I say, when we make a loop, we are going to be repeating through a range of values and doing some code for each one. So we can say have some data and we can do something with each piece of data. To do that, we have to have some kind of counter so we can see where we are in our loop. And so we're just going to actually demonstrate how that works. Now, there are actually multiple kinds of loops in coding. There's a for loop and a while loop. We're only going to be looking at a for loop, which works for a set of values. So you define basically a range or something for the loop to work on. A while loop is one that works while a condition is true. So while something is true, it will keep repeating the code. And as soon as it's no longer true, it will stop. That's not the kind you're going to be looking at this course, but you can go away and learn about those in JavaScript if you're interested. So for our for loop, we're funnily enough going to write the word for as our key word, and then hit space. And then I'm going to do some brackets, because what we need to do now is define how long the loop's going to run for, when it would repeat some code, what's going to happen here. So first of all, I need a counting variable. I need something that I can count from that can go up and down, and we can kind of see the counting going on in my loop. So I'm going to write var and make a little variable inside these brackets, space I, and then I'm going to do an equal sign 0, which just means I'm going to start counting at 0. The reason I'm doing this is just because I'm going to do some counting. It doesn't matter what I start from, but you might find it useful to start from 0 if you're working in an array, because the index numbers start from 0. Or you might need to start from 1 because you've got a header row. So you can choose what number you're sort of start counting at here, but I've gone for 0 in this case. Then I need to do a semicolon inside the brackets, a bit weird, I know, to define the next piece of information for our for loop. So I'm going to do a space, and then I'm going to do I is less than 10. And then I'm going to end that with a semicolon. So what that means is start our variable I at 0. It's going to count there. Keep going until I is no longer less than 10. I must always be less than 10. So it's not going to run forever. We don't want to make an infinite loop. That's a bad idea. And finally, we need to tell it how to increment I. So how much I should go up with by each time the loop runs. So I'm going to do a space and go I plus plus, which is shorthand for I is going to go up for by one each time, because it actually means I equals I plus 1, which is reassigning the value of I to be 1 more than it used to be each time. So I plus plus just means increment it by 1 each time. So this bit can look a bit confusing, but once you know what it means, you can just tweak it as you need. You don't need to fully know exactly why this is doing it. So don't panic if it's getting a bit confusing. We will practice more loops as well. So I'm going to make sure I'm now outside of my round brackets, my 3 pieces of information separated by semicolons. I'm going to do some curly braces. So far, we've mostly seen these in the context of our function, but they're also used to enclose other bits of code. In this case, the code inside our loop. So the AppScript editor has automatically put the closing curly brace as well. So when my cursor is between the two of them, I'm going to hit enter, and now I can work inside my curly braces. The only thing I'm going to do is log what the value of I is each time my loop runs. So I'm going to write logger.log brackets I, and then end that with this little semicolon. So all I'm going to do is each time the loop runs, each time it repeats, it's going to tell me what the value of I is. Now, this is a great chance for me to see how it kind of works without actually doing anything. So I'm going to hit save, like so, and then I'm going to hit run. And it didn't make me authorize anything because I didn't actually access any Google Apps. This was all just running in the script editor. So I didn't use the spreadsheet or anything here. But you can see that I have an execution log, which has each value from 0 until 9. So it doesn't get to 10 because that's what we told it not to do. And it runs each time separately. So they're not all in one line. They're all individual values because it's happened individually. You can't tell because it's been so quick that it's actually all happened at the exact same second, which is handy, but means we can't really see the fact that it actually was happening at a different point. But we can see that it started, it logged each value, and then it finished. So that's really helpful. Let's just quickly see the alternate version of that then. So I'm going to edit my code here. If you want to, you could make a copy of your code, or you could edit it and then edit it back, whatever you feel, or you can just watch me. But I'm going to show you how to do it backwards, just because it's a bit of fun. So we're going to change the value of I to start at 10. So I've just put a 1 in there, so it starts at 10. And I'm going to change my I is greater than 10, so less than 10. So my I, so now it says I is greater than 0. And then I'm going to change I++ to I minus minus. So now what I'm doing is saying, start the value of I at 10, make sure I is always greater than 0, and minus 1 from the value of I each time. So if I hit save and run now, we can see in our execution log that it starts at 10 and it goes down by 1 each time until it gets, so it could no longer be running because it would be hit 0 and it wouldn't work. So that's just a little example there of how we can do it the opposite way around. Normally you're going up by 1, but it's useful to know that you can reverse it. Okay, let's do another loop. Let's actually use our spreadsheet now. So we're going to make a second script file in here. So I'm going to use this plus button and click script, and I'm going to call this one days loop. Like so. If I click away, it will give us a brand new function here called days loop. So I'm going to rename the function part as well to days loop because we're going to loop through the days. So I'm very imaginative in my naming. I'm going to make sure my cursor is at the end of line 1, hit enter a couple of times and hit save. So we're ready to go. Now, I'm not going to put any comments in this code because it's only like a few lines long, but if you want to put some comments to help you, feel free to put any comments and notes you need to when you're doing your live coding. This is for you, not for us. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the spreadsheet that we're going to be working on and the sheet. And I'm actually going to do it in one line just because we're not going to be doing anything else with the spreadsheet because it's a very little bit of code. So I'm just going to write var space sheet equals, and then I'm going to start with the spreadsheet app. So we're going to do our good friend spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. So we've got our active spreadsheet, open and close those round brackets, vital, doesn't work without them. But then I'm going to do dot get sheet by name. Open and close some brackets. Once again, it needs a string, so I'm going to put some quotes ready to put my sheet name in. Now I'm going to go back here, and my sheet's called sheet 1, and as you might have seen from previous videos, I prefer to give them a name, so I'm going to change it to data, and then just copy the word data from there, so that when I go back in here, I can paste in data, or I can type it in, the word data. And I'm going to end my line with a semicolon. So there we go. We've got my spreadsheet now to work with. So now I'm going to get the range with my list in, and then we're going to loop through that list. So I'm going to hit enter. Let's hit enter again, just leave a little bit of space, and I'm going to get my list of days. So I'm going to create a variable, var space. I'm going to call it days list because that's what it is. It's a list of days. It could be a list of anything. Then I'm going to do an equal sign, and I'm going to access my sheet and do get range. We've used this a few times before now, so we're going to use get range. So what am I going to start from my range? We start in row 1, column 1. That's nice and simple. So 1, 1, and how many rows do we want to use? Well, there's 7. So I'm going to say 7. And it's only 1 column, so I can actually leave that blank because we don't have to give a column. So I've got 1, 1, 7 as my range. That's going to get 7 rows, and there's only 1 column of data. Then I'm going to do dot get values, open and close my brackets, and line with semicolon. Now I have multiple rows here, so I do want it to stay as a 2-dimensional array. So this is all good. This is what I'm looking for at the moment. So I'm going to hit save just to make sure that's all going okay, make sure it's saved. And then we're going to do the last little bit of code here, which is our actual loop. So I'm going to hit enter and enter again. And then I'm going to do my for loop. So I'm going to write for space, do some brackets again, and we're going to give it those 3 pieces of information again. So var space I equals. And this is where you have to do a little bit of thinking. What do I want my loop to start at? So I have an array of data called days list. So I've got the values from my spreadsheet. They're stored in a 2-dimensional array. That means my counting for which row I'm on, which bit of data I'm working with, is going to start from 0 because it's index 0. So I'm going to start I from 0 again. That's why we did it last time, actually, just so we can see this in practice. And then I'm going to do a semicolon and then a space. And I'm going to do I is less than, well, I've got 7 values. And if we're starting counting at 0, that means that the final one's going to be 6. So if I do I is less than 7, that's going to be correct. The advantage of working in an array is that when you want to know when your loop should end, it's just actually the number of values because the counting is always 1 behind. So that does make it a little bit easier. Then I'm going to do a semicolon, space, and I'm just going to do I++ because I'd like it to go up by 1 each time. So just to go over again, we have our counting variable created. It's starting from 0. It's going to go up until it is not 7. So once it gets to 6, that's when it's going to stop. We don't want it to ever become 7. And it's going to go up by 1 each time. Now I'm going to do my curly braces and hit enter so that I can create my loop code. So this is the code that repeats inside the curly braces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to log the value of days list that we'd be working with if we were actually doing something with this loop. So I'm going to write logger.log, open some brackets, and I'm going to write days list, try and spell it correctly. If you misspell variables, they don't work. And then I am going to do square brackets and square brackets. So we've got a 2-dimensional array, which means I need to do 2 sets of square brackets to work it out. So the first set of square brackets is which of the subarrays I'm in. So it's essentially which row am I working in. And that's where we're going to use our counting, because each time we're going to go down a row of data, essentially. So I'm going to put I in that one. So it's going to start at 0, and then it will keep going up by 1 each time. And then the next bit of data is which position are we in the second array. Well, we've actually only got 1 column. So it's actually always just 0 here, because we're always working in the first column, which is index 0. So we go days list, square brackets around I, and then some square brackets around 0. And I can just end my line with a semicolon, like so. Then I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to hit run. I'm going to have to do authorization because we have used the spreadsheet app this time. So I'm going to go through and allow it to use my Google account. And you can see now on individual lines, I have the days of the week. And again, it happened within 1 second. So we can't actually see the time it takes. We need to do some slower things when we're using loops if we want to actually see them happen. So there we have all of the stuff happening there. And if I wanted to run it again, I can run it again, I can see it again, but we've got our loop working. If your loop doesn't work, double check the numbers you've used, make sure all your code looks the same, and keep an eye on things like your less than and more signs, where you've used your bits of punctuation, if you've got the right semicolons. Those are always the little things to check out for. But yeah, that was loops. Thanks for watching.